Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Matt Skidmore Show. We're joined here today by the one and only Cody Hill. And Cody, you happen to be an ex-employee of one of our social media giants, Facebook, as well as one of our big tech giants, Amazon, which means you can give us, our audience here on the Matt Skidmore Show, a really unique perspective into a lot of the issues that I feel like our government is just not up to speed with and ahead of the curve on. And we're seeing, I think, the consequences of that more and more in our everyday life, whether it be social media companies censoring information, whether it be on like one side of the aisle or the other, or fake news and disinformation about coronavirus or vaccines or this or that spreading all over the internet. Companies like Google, Amazon, just having these almost what seems like monopolies on these industries that, 20 years ago, there was no e-commerce, there was no search engine. And I don't know. I'm sure you, as somebody who worked at Facebook, you've watched the tech hearings and just like laughed when these Congress people who literally have weeks to prepare, months to prepare for these things, they know it's coming. They'll be like, how does Facebook make money? But anyways, let's how about introduce yourself. Tell us how many years did you work at Facebook and how many years did you work at Amazon, and what exactly did you do at these companies?
Hey guys, thanks for having me on, Matt. I've been a fan of you for a while. Enjoyed the live stream with you and Paget last night. And so let's see here. So I most recently was working at Facebook for about 2.5 years. I quit about 2 months ago, moved from California, from San Francisco back to North Carolina, where I'm from essentially, and joined a startup around political transparency there. And so before I was at Facebook, I had gotten my MBA in North Carolina at UNC Chapel Hill. I don't know if there's any Tar Heels out there, but I'm Tar Heel. Sorry to the Duke fans. But during that time, I did you do an internship during your MBA. So between your first years, I worked at Amazon in Seattle at the headquarters. So that was kind of the first taste that I had gotten of kind of big tech and how everything works. So I was there for a whole summer. It was like 3-4 months. So it wasn't like I was a long-term employee there. But then when I graduated with my grad degree, I went and was full-time in Menlo Park, California, which is where Facebook's headquarters are. I was in the belly of the beast, as they say, on the huge campus there, taking the bus to and from San Francisco where I was living every morning. And I was working in product operations. So basically, I sat between the software engineers and the product team and basically understood what the product team needed and help the engineers kind of understand it in a way for them to build things out, fix the product, and kind of build what we needed built. So it's happy to go into more as much as I can, hoping that Papa Facebook doesn't, crack down on me for anything I say today, but it's all in good love, Mark, Cheryl. So, these are things that we have to talk about. So,
yeah, I guess to kind of kick it off, why did you decide to stop working at Facebook after 2.5 years? Mm-hmm. Was it something like you just were ready to move on and try to do your own thing? Because I know now you have a startup, or was it like something about the work that made you say this isn't for me anymore?
Yeah. So I just got a little bit of a internet spike. So hopefully it doesn't fall out. Sometimes it happens, but I heard enough. So I left Facebook after 2 years. I mean, the main reason was that it is such a big company. It felt really hard to feel like what I was doing mattered, and kind of wanting to feel like I was having an impact on building something positive for people. And then also I became very engaged politically through the Yang Gang during the Democratic primary. So just understanding the way that he was talking about politics and understanding really what big tech was. And I don't really think most people understand, they hear the words big tech and they hear all these horror stories of what it's doing to people. And I think it's really easy just to think of that as a very blunt object without getting into the details of like what it means and the actual repercussions for how negative externalities are like manifesting in society. And so I began to think about a lot of those when I was working at Facebook. And at a certain point, I was just like, this is such a big machine that it can kind of run on its own from the perspective of what I was doing. You know, the software engineers are half the company. They do all the hard work, not all of it. They do a lot of the hard work. And for me, it was like, no matter how much effort I put in or not, the same things just kind of already happened because algorithms and pre-planned automated ways of getting work done are already so sophisticated and built out at these big tech companies that it's like these minor little tweaks that kind of non-engineers have to do on the sides to like basically like keep the horses within the guardrails of the company. And it didn't, at a certain point, it didn't feel that fulfilling. We can get into the whole social consequences and what it is doing to our, especially young people and older generation as well with the kind of ads business model. And that was something that I just really didn't feel like was a good thing for society. And so just overall, I felt like I needed to do something new. And then when I looked across the landscape of like, what can technology bring the most value to? Like what sector? You know, you think about all these different sectors out there, like social media is like, I would call like communication sector. And we have so much tech and so many like brilliant, smart, problem-solving people in this communication sector that it's almost like too much. It's leading to like more negative than positive. It's like, we can communicate well enough. We can see anything and find out anything almost too well. So we should be concentrating on sectors that are behind, that need efficiency, where tech could actually help them be better. And one of those was like, the most glaring one to me was politics. And that was something that Yang, of course, talked a lot about. But like, how can we bring smarter tech to make politics more transparent? Because I think a huge problem is that people are becoming disengaged with politics because it is hard to understand. Like no one knows what is going on in the state house or in actual Congress with actual legislation. We are all sitting around watching this national drama unfold of this like name calling and like literally these things that are unfortunately distracting us from like policy and real issues that could be done to help people. So to me, it's like technology, that's what it's good at, is like bringing transparency, is bringing efficiency so that problems can be solved, basically. It's like anytime a problem comes up at Facebook or Amazon, they fix it in like 10 minutes because they have all these processes built out to understand the problem, build have these frameworks to like solve it very quickly. And in politics, it's like we've had the same problems for decades and they don't ever get fixed because there's no incentive to get them fixed, unfortunately. But that is the long-winded answer of why I left Facebook.
Yeah, I think people could definitely understand that, like that the work, it wouldn't feel. I guess if you're somebody who's in the Yang gang and somebody who likes Andrew Yang, you're obviously somebody who is a fan of this mantra of like putting humanity first and trying to find work that's actually meaningful. And if you're, I mean, we're going to get into it, but there's different ways to look at these tech companies and what they're actually doing and whether what they're doing is a net benefit for society or a net negative for society. And that's actually the first kind of big topic I want to get into. Is I want to ask you, what do you see as the net benefits of social media for society as well as the net negatives? Because I mean, off top of my head, I can just think like one of the big positives is we have such greater access to information and what's going on in the world. That's like a great thing. That's how, you know, me here in suburban Maryland can find out that, oh, wow, in Iran, there's people protesting their government there. And I can see it on, you know, my Twitter feed minutes after it happens. It's crazy. But also, you know, social media has made people, in my opinion, a lot more polarized, a lot more tribal. So just, I think like across just society in general, what do you see as the net negatives and positives?
Yeah. Are you from suburban Maryland, by the way?
I've lived here. I've lived here my whole life. Like right outside DC.
Yeah, same. I'm from Northern Virginia, Fairfax. So Very cool. All right, I'll break it down for you, Matt. So there's a couple different ways to think about this. There's kind of like, so the lens that I look at it through for benefits is, the product that I worked on in Facebook was basically emerging markets. So if you think about Facebook, like what is Facebook's total addressable market? It is the 8 billion people in the world. They want 8 billion people to have a Facebook account. And if you look at the 8 billion people in the world, 4 billion of the people in the world, literally half, do not use the internet. So the majority of these are in Asia, Africa, Latin America. They are in very rural parts usually. A lot of times they're also in like the outskirts of big cities. And there is like huge connectivity issues that unfortunately can't be solved without big tech, because they are very expensive to have like nonprofits go in and like set up Wi-Fi, or because there's not a lot of ROI on getting unconnected populations connected, unfortunately. Because unfortunately they often are poorer, they're in more rural areas, and they don't have digital literacy. And it's so like there's this whole half of the world, the benefit that bringing internet and information and getting them online for the first time, like I think that's a huge benefit. If you for Facebook, I got to travel to India, to Bangladesh, to Singapore, Indonesia, and you see populations that have like don't even know what the weather is going to be tomorrow. So that like very basic stuff that like we take for granted.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say.
Yeah, it's like they don't even have a way to really like find out what their like local laws are, which makes like corruption a lot easier. It makes them getting taken advantage of much easier. And so it's like spreading the internet to those parts of the world, I think, is so much more incrementally beneficial than in the developed world, kind of the bubbles that we live in, like increasing the efficiency of me being able to watch 20 more Instagram videos every day. Like that's a net negative, in my opinion. Like that is doing nothing but like reinforcing everyone's, priors and everything. And so I kind of look at these two different worlds. Now, the world of the emerging markets as well, it's much more complicated than just bringing the internet, because kind of giving the internet to people who have never had a screen in their house, who have never interacted with media before, who don't understand the concept of like seeing an image and understanding like, is it true? Is it like entertainment? Like what is it? So unfortunately, just like throwing the internet at populations that don't have it is much more complicated, because there needs to be like education. There needs to be ways for them to understand how they can use it in a safe way. And so I think that is a benefit if it's done in a good way.
So
yeah,
I was gonna say, it sounds like when we think of like how, just big tech in general and social media and all these different, like the internet, in places where they don't have it, it can do amazing things still, and there's still so much potential. But how do you think like when it like here in the US, we've had these technologies, they're still new, but we've had them now for 10 or 20 years. Why do you think like I guess the question is like, despite the fact that these social media and the internet and technology, it's brought our society together and connected us in ways that we never could have imagined, but there's consequences to that we're really seeing play out. And like I mentioned it like kind of in the intro, but you have people that right now legitimately are convincing tens of millions of Americans that a certain candidate won the presidential election when he pretty clearly lost. Like, if you look at the math, we're big fans of math. So I wonder, like, I guess, why is that? Is there a reason that specifically that right now that's becoming such a problem? Or like, why is, I guess, what is it about social media that is just making it so easy for people to spread like misinformation? Because that is what I see as one of the big net negatives.
Yeah, this is such a big, like, meaty topic. I totally agree. It is like, So the thing that the thing that everything comes down to is that like the economy is all just ruled. I mean, this economy with media is all just ruled by attention and clicks. And unfortunately, because we're human, like our base nature is to interact with things that raise our emotions more, that make us either like confirm what we believe so that we feel good about ourselves, or they basically show what we don't believe in a really bad light, so then we feel good about ourselves. And so like all content is being created, is like we're able to hyper personalize everything so much because of big data, and because Facebook and Google and everyone knows every little thing about you, that they can essentially create like perfect models of how you think and who you are and how you'll react to any piece of content. Like they know you way, way, way better than you do. Trust me. They have thousands of brilliant engineers that are
Scary.
that are able to put you in whatever emotional state you need to be put into. And it's not like they're doing that nefariously. It's all done through kind of algorithms that have built up over time that say like we need to get more engagement. So it all comes back.
The end goal, the end goal would just be to what you referenced earlier. They're just trying to get as many users as possible, as many people on their site. It's money reigns supreme in this situation. That's the motive, right?
Mm-hmm. And Facebook's revenue is like 99.8% ads. And so the other point too is that they have like Oculus and like some devices and stuff. But if you think about like what is an ad is basically like how well can we predict who you are and like how you're going to act. That's like what advertising is. So then we can create messaging to kind of take advantage of that psychological state and make you kind of act in a way that we want you to, whether it's clicking here or buying this or signing up for this, subscribing. So that's essentially like if their entire revenue model is based on predicting how you're going to act, then they're going to be continually working on making super accurate, personalized models of like who you are and understanding that. And so if they can't so they're basically, the way that I like to think about it is that there's kind of like the X and Y axis of, maybe it's social and economic, and there's all these kind of predictable bubbles that occur because we're human and we have different personality traits and different economic situations. And so if you think there's like the Bernie bubble, and then there's like the, conservative bubble, there's the nationalist bubble, whatever. They
it's muted. Yang bubble, baby.
Yang bubble, yes. That's the bubble that needs to grow. But basically if you think about people who lay between the bubbles, who maybe have some opinions, but then one opinion is like a little bit different than the bubble that they're trying to be kind of pushed into because of the marketing, because of the advertising algorithm, then like they actually try to move you into these predictive bubbles. So then those bubbles can kind of be sold as like advertising predictors, and that they thus can charge more for the ads because they have a better model of how you're going to think and how you're going to act.
And
so
see, I was just going to say that to me, this is like one of the problems, right? Because depending which bubble Facebook decides it's most profitable for them to gear you towards, to put information in front of you selectively, that's going to slowly over time shift your opinion on a topic. I mean, to me, that's how we have people that are like radicalized. Yep. Like, because they get pushed maybe more towards the fringes, more towards the extreme. I know there's like a lot of different other factors that play about it, but this is like, I think, the real crux for me personally when I think about this topic, because for me, I'm somebody who's really big on free speech. Like, I don't want social media companies and the government really censoring anything, correcting anything, taking down anything, because I think they would do a terrible job at it. I think when we look at the way that they have handled it now, and we'll get into it more, I think that they have been doing a terrible job. So it's like, it kind of stinks to me that they're out, in my opinion, what they're in a way creating the problem that they have also been sent to solve. Like Twitter and Facebook, they've been getting pushed by the media and by the government to, you need to get a handle on all this crazy crap that's being said on your website. But at the same time, their like algorithms are pushing people to a position or a group where they're more likely to become crazy and say crazy stuff.
Yep.
That's just my reaction to kind of what you're saying as I'm thinking through it.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's like the way that the business model is set up, it's like because people want to get rid of like right-wing extremism so much, and it actually ends up like creating more of it because they get more put into that because they feel more like they have this righteous battle that they're fighting, and that everyone is like more so against them because that's what they're seeing from the other side, because the other side is being put more into their bubbles of thinking that all of that is like, and it is like very, very bad. But it's like each side. So if you think about like, so, I mean, it's, yeah, there's a lot of things to go into, but if you think about like if you think about everyone's personalized like newsfeed or the information that they see, it all just basically confirms what you believe, and then gives you every once in a while give you the opposite of how what you don't believe is totally untrue, or the people who think that are dumb, or they're trying to like nefariously do something to hurt you or like what you believe in. And that happens on both sides. And so the more hyper personalized that all of our content becomes, like the more it reinforces that you are right. And it
reinforces people's existing narratives.
Anyone who doesn't think like you is wrong.
Yeah.
And so, like, we've had this training over like decades, a decade now of only seeing all this stuff that confirms that we know what's going on, and everyone has their own version of it, and then confirms that people who are the opposite of you or even like slightly different than you are either like the devil, or they have like a screw loose, or they're nefarious. And so it's like there's no incentive to have any type of nuanced conversation. The only people that are doing this are like independent content creators like yourself, like people who are on YouTube. I watch a lot of them, but it's like it incentivizes groups basically hating each other, because if you can put that group into a raised emotional state, if Trump is a nefarious actor who's being controlled by Putin, or Joe Biden is secretly trying to shove in socialism under the cover of darkness, like those are scary things for a lot of people. And so that is going to keep them on the platform, keep them clicking, keep them sharing this, which all drives engagement and all allows kind of the ads model to perpetuate itself. And the unfortunate thing is that if you think about, 10, 20 years ago, 20, 30 years ago, it's like there were very few news sources. And now with the proliferation of lots of different news sources and independent sources, the Fox Newses and the MSNBCs and the CNNs of the world now have more competition. So in order to win that competition, they basically have to make their content more extreme sounding and more existential and more like the world is ending. Like if you see any Fox News video on YouTube, it always says like breaking, like if you in like all caps, if you look at it, it's like, or if you see like all like the right wing, it's always like breaking, like red alert, exclamation points. And so like they know for the type of personality that engages with that type of media, they know the right kind of ticks, the right ways to kind of like psychologically arouse them. And then on the other side, it's like for the kind of more liberal side, it's like the dog whistles, the nefarious undercover, this is what they really mean, or like this is like really going on and it's going to lead to this. It's like they know how to speak to that audience in the way that kind of like psychologically tickles their called conspiracy or whatever proclivity to that. And so it's like both sides are just like pushing and pulling and basically rousing each side up, because it is very profitable to do that. And they can't go in the opposite direction, because then their revenue would go down. So it's like, at the end of the day, if that's the only thing they're measured by, then there's only one direction that it can go, which is more hyper-personalization, which is more division. And anyone who is within the big media organizations that would ever like call that out or say like, hey, we should probably think differently about it, they would like either lose their job or wouldn't get as much airtime. And so there's no incentive to kind of reform it from within, which is really unfortunate.
Yeah. Oh, there's a lot there, like a lot of really interesting information, a lot of scary information. I think for me, the first thing that just jumps out at me is how, like, if you had tried to explain a lot of this to somebody in Congress, they would just be like, huh? What?
Yeah.
So,
We only speak in simple platitudes, okay?
Where's my donut?
Yeah, we don't break down problems here in Congress.
So I mean, the first thing is just it sucks that the government is so behind the curve on solving these issues, which to me puts us between a rock and a hard place, because then the answer to try to solve this and try to stop our social media platforms from dividing us even more when we're already so divided is to leave it up to the tech companies. And that's kind of what, scares me, because like just thinking of it off the top, Jack Dorsey, for example, obviously CEO of Twitter, we think he's a great guy. We endorse Yang, donated millions to UBI relief, blah, blah, blah. But at the same time, it's no one person, no one CEO, no one individual should have the single power to decide what isn't and what isn't like real news or fake news, or what isn't true and what's not true, what isn't factual, what's not factual. It's just not something that one individual should have that much power. And it leaves me to like this weird place where I don't really know what the answer is, because I see like on Twitter, they do fact checks on Donald Trump's crazy claims about the election. It's like, yes, that's a good thing, but the problem is conservatives, they're never going to be happy with it, because they'll look at all the fake news and disinformation that comes out against Republicans, making Trump or whoever look bad. And that's never corrected. That's never like fixed, and there's never some sort of addendum posting the truth. So people just look at it and they're saying these tech companies, these people that run them, they aren't in the position to be the neutral arbiters of truth. And I mean, one question I was going to ask you is, someone who worked at Facebook, is it true, like a lot of conservatives, they say that these corporations, people working within them, are biased against conservatives and Republicans? Is that something that you saw in your personal experience? Like, if it is, I don't think it would be like the fault. Like, I don't think anybody, my personal opinion, I don't think anybody there is nefarious. But the fact of the matter is, if you have a big concentration of people who hold left-wing views, there might be a bias in the enforcement of some of their policies against the other side. Did you see that?
So Silicon Valley in general is like, it's mostly young people. So the majority of people who work at Facebook definitely are more liberal leaning, 100%. And like one of the things that they do, so I like interviewed and hired people for Facebook some. And so like one of the things that they really do stress is like empathy. And like, we need to hire empathetic people. And like, that was like a big thing. And it is true. They definitely do. Like, and we ask specific questions about that. And like, and so, because that's a good thing, because if you think about what Facebook's product is, it is basically, can we understand how people from every culture around the world communicate? And that requires an empathetic mindset. Now, empathy is typically more a personality trait that more liberals have. It is just kind of like naturally built into more liberal leaning people who are more open. And that most of that is just like literally personality based. And so people who are kind of drawn to working at a company like Facebook typically are like more liberal, and in Silicon Valley in general.
I knew it. You all hate conservatives.
But it's like, and we can get into the whole like empathy thing. I have a lot to say about that. But I noticed internally, like there wasn't like me just being like a moderate. Like I didn't really talk about political views there.
That's kind of what I wanted to ask. Is like, there's one thing is to people to be associated on the left, but do you think that people like if I'm the person who's running Facebook and there's an algorithm that's tagging things that might be like offensive or a violation of their policies, fake news or whatever, and it goes to manual review, do you think that their biases are actually affecting their views, are affecting the enforcement of their policies, I guess is the real question?
Yeah, it's that I don't know I couldn't say. It's like humans do create algorithms and run things at the end of the day. So like there's a chance that happens. And another thing is like when they ask, so like to give Zuckerberg credit, and like so like when like there are so many different teams and things going on, and like little programs and like little micro products and processes. I think they brought up something during the congressional hearing about like this tool that was like used, and it's like I had no idea what it was.
Well,
Like thousands of tools, and like I don't think he was lying when he was like, I'm not.
Well, I'll defend Zuck on that. I get what you're saying, because there are people who will ask him. There were Congress people who asked him questions when he was in Congress, like, what is the details of this specific thing? And Zuck's like, I don't know, but I'll have my team get back on that. And they're like, you don't know? You're the CEO. How do you not know? It's like, guys, there's like how many thousands of people working at Facebook?
Yeah.
Like, I get Zuckerberg's smart, but I don't think he's that smart.
Yeah. And anyway. So there's 50,000 people working there. There's hundreds, thousands of like product teams and processes. It's like, I get that. And I will also give him credit. I think that he did a good job internally of like trying to be like objective. One of the impressive things, and this is public, that he did is like every Friday he would get up and do a Q&A and like answer questions from anyone in the company. They could ask anything and was voted upon, and he would like have to answer tough questions. He got a lot of like pushback internally for basically like not being uber liberal enough. So like he did show like a modicum of being a bit more like moderate, which I appreciated. But I mean, in general, there's more liberal people than there is like conservative for sure.
And I think that is kind of like, I think that is what maybe scares, like, because for the left and the right, it seems that they each have different concerns when it comes to big tech, when it comes to social media. For the right, it seems to be this issue of, being biased against conservatives and Republican news and Republican stories, Republican outlets. And to me, it's a valid fear to have, because like for the reason I mentioned earlier, in the way that Twitter enforces their policies, but even like Facebook, they have a new thing where third-party fact-checking sites can like decide whether a story is fake or real. And if the third-party fact-checking site decides it's like not a true story, suddenly like you can't put it on Facebook, like it'll get taken down. Yeah. And I think like the big example we saw of this was like the New York Post story. And this was on Twitter as well, where you literally couldn't even post the story. And I get that if you're on the left, you don't like that story. You think it's a pre-cooked up bunch of BS weeks before the election smear campaign. And it probably is. But the fact of the matter is, just because something like doesn't make you happy, it doesn't mean it's inherently fake. It doesn't mean it's inherently the facts aren't real. Like, so to me, it doesn't. It just, I don't really know a good solution, because like I know Andrew Yang, who we love, he's somebody who seems to think like a combination of government and like the big tech companies working together can like solve it. I truthfully, I don't know what it is. And I don't know. Do you have any kind of like unique solutions when it comes to this idea? Do you know if there's like any solution within the industry where they're actually trying to find an effective way to do this? Because I just see it becoming even more and more of a problem. Like, as social media, I think will only just continue to dominate our lives.
There's no other way for it to happen, unfortunately, now than like the only way that it's going to go is that it's going to become more of a problem. That's the only way, because with the way like the business model is, and it prioritizes like engagement, like there's literally no other way that it can, unless by some miracle we are able to incentivize like people talking about issues, or like getting something positive around like seeing the other side of an issue, or like actually understanding how other people think and appreciating that, which unfortunately I think we've become way too trained to not do. Within tech, the industry, I did not see any like large scale solutions happening. I think that they would probably be like open to some type of like regulation if it was approached in like a smart way, not with just like a very.
Well, that's the problem.
But like, there's
our government's not going to do anything in a smart way.
Yeah, and it's like they have so many lobbyists that they're already like in the pocket. They already have, all the big tech companies already have hundreds of lawyers that have created, 12-part contingency plans of what they will do and how they will act in any possible regulation scenario. So they've already gamed that out so that they will get as much benefit as possible no matter what happens. Like, definitely. And so, I mean, like one of the things is just literally talking about this and exposing like the fact that this is actually happening. So one of the things I like to think about is like, there's no incentive anywhere in media for anyone to like go back and admit that they were wrong at any point or like change their viewpoint. Like literally no one does that. So I'll give just like a quick example. I was for you, Matt. So like you have this channel, which is great. And you are like building it and like you want more subscribers and like that's awesome. Like that's like the model.
Subscribe.
Yes. Click and subscribe, hit the bell. And so it's like, and you've built a lot of that off of being in the Yang Gang and like putting lots of Andrew Yang content up. So like there's no incentive for you to all of a sudden like stop talking positively about Yang. Because like that would be, and like you wouldn't, because it would be stupid because like he actually is correct. But like think about like your scenario for people.
That's why I'm lucky.
Who are becoming like influencers.
Lucky me.
So then translate you to like you being like a mid-level influencer who in like the right wing or the left wing, who maybe on the left side they've gotten popular off of just posting like Trump content all the time, which by the way is getting so freaking boring now. And on the right side, maybe they're getting really popular doing like conspiracy type stuff. It's like those people are building their fan bases around all that. So for them to ever like go back and like admit that they were wrong or be like, hey, I've kind of like gained some new information and changed, like maybe we should be thinking about this in a different way. They will never do that because they would lose subscribers, they would lose engagement. And so it then forces them in. That's how like the whole forcing into like crazier corners gets. It's like, so then for them to compete with other people who have similar views, like they have to go like a bit crazier. And so it's like this thing where you start to gain popularity or you're at a big media company and you have this, the word like narrative is so fraught, but like, it's what it is. It's like they have a narrative that they have to hold, the right and the left have it for each channel, that if they kind of stray off that, they'll lose engagement, they'll lose people watching, and so it's like for them to ever, like, I think it would be so powerful if a prominent media figure came out and was like, hey, I was wrong on this. I think that for the past X amount of years, we were being like unfair to X candidate, whoever you want to say. And like that person would probably get fired. And these people all have like families and incentives and like this is their job. So like there's zero incentive for anyone to have a nuanced conversation or admit that they're wrong, which just leads them on the path to accepting more crazy positions over time.
There has to be some way to get accountability on these companies, the people running them, but also I think to some degree the people that are actually using the platforms, like that in a way that to me doesn't hinge on free speech. I don't know, like one answer that people have suggested is you make it like everybody has to use their real name online, just like in real life you can't give like a fake name when you sign up for the gym and mingle with people in there. I mean, you technically could tell people you have a different name, but you get what I'm saying, right? Mm-hmm. Like but then there's the whole other conversation, like the reason I'm online is because I'm anonymous. So like I don't know like necessarily what like the right answer is on that. I want to I'm sure you have like some more thoughts too.
Yeah.
But I also want to ask like would you consider a company like Facebook to be more of a platform or a publisher? Because technically if they start getting into the business of deciding like, okay, you're not allowed to say this on my site because this is bad, but this is good, and oh, this topic's banned, you're allowed to talk. Suddenly they're not really a platform anymore, they're like a publisher. And basically by the way that the laws work around publishers, like if you're a TV station and you say something libelous or slanderous against someone, they have like the right to sue you, because you're not just saying like, oh, anybody can come on here and say whatever they want and we're not responsible for it. You're selectively like publishing which information is on your channel. Yeah. If the social media companies go in that direction, they effectively become publishers. I don't know, like, and then that to me that just changes like, it's It's really is. We're in the Wild West here, and it's only going to get much crazier as even more like we're talking social media, which has already been here for a while. I mean, we're looking at AI automation, but I guess do you consider to be more of a publisher or a platform, and what like are the ramifications, and just still going into like what more can we do to try to do something about this issue without, in my opinion, my big goal, my big hope, impinging on free speech.
Yeah, I agree. I'm a free speech guy as well. Like they should be platforms, in my opinion. They are infringing every now and again on being more of like a publisher and censoring, which I don't like. And like the more that they do that, so if you think about a scenario where like I think that exposing all types of speech out there is the only way to like get rid of the bad ideas. So like if those are out in the open, then they get exposed by most people for being bad ideas, and then the fringes, it's harder for them to grow. Now, if they start to get censored, then that actually makes the fringes grow, like the fringes on the left, fringes on the right, because then they could say, look, like we're getting censored, and then it becomes like a religious type of fervor where it's like, I mean, it's just believe this, they don't want us to talk about it. So then more people are doing that because having something like that is attractive for people to want to.
It's just psychology. It's like, I mean, if you think that, oh, I know the big conspiracy that I'm not allowed to talk about, that they're hiding from us, and suddenly you talk about it, and even if it's not true, they censor you and ban your account. You're like, I knew it. They don't want me to tell anybody.
To them. They have reason to believe. It's logical in their worldview. It's logical, and then so it's like anytime that they're either censored or they're kind of like publicly ridiculed, made to seem like they're the worst people in the world, that grows their ranks. That literally creates more far right people. That creates more people with fringe ideologies, and like. So it's the people who quote unquote are the ones who want to stop that because it's hurting society because they're awful people. Their actions are literally growing it, and it's hard to like understand that. So like one just big base under everything that I love that Yang talked about was just like all of this like religious fervor around ideologies. A lot of it is just because people are in worse economic situations. People have like the boot on their throat. They're not able to like think clearly and like plan for the future because unfortunately, if you think of like the pyramid of society, the top gets taller and pointier and the bottom, the base continues to grow. So as like more people feel disenfranchised from not having a shot in their life or not feeling like their life matters or not feeling like they have anything to lose, those are the populations that end up going to the fringes. And it's like economically, if we can just somehow alleviate this like boot on the neck mentality of where it causes people to not care about their life. And so they start getting into this religious fervor of like conspiracies or fringe ideologies, and like that is the most important thing underlying all of this is that economic piece. But obviously, as we saw, Yang kind of get systematically, not talked about a lot. If you do the Yang media blackout, like there's a lot of incentive to not change that. So I think just one thing we can do is just like talk about this and like make more people aware, because the more that the bottom of the pyramid continues to grow, the more that we're going to see the fringes grow. And then eventually bad stuff is going to happen because of that. There's no other way that it can happen, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think Frostbite hits the nail on the head. Censorship pushes the fringe into their own bubbles of reality. I mean, that's really what it is. We have there's multiple different realities in America. There's the reality where Joe Biden's a socialist and the Democrats stole the election and Donald Trump won. And then there's the reality where, well, that's the actual reality where Biden did win the election. I mean, it's crazy how we can live. You could literally live across the street from somebody. But if you are in a different bubble online, a different social media bubble, you will have two different visions of what the world looks like. And that to me is a pretty scary thing. One more thing. Sorry, go ahead.
I'll just like two quick things about that. But those people across the street from each other, if they were to like go outside and like
Yes.
say hi to each other and have a conversation where they weren't just tied to their phones. It's like, that is what we need to be doing. Like, but now, especially with like COVID, everyone's just like locked on these machines all day, looking at content. But it's like, we're all human. And if we interact like in person more and just like talk about normal things, we don't hate each other as much as they want to incentivize. Should I forget the other thing I was going to say? Yeah, go ahead.
It's all good. I'm sure it'll come back because that happens to me all the time. I wanted to ask like one more final kind of question, at least for right now, on the social media topic. And you mentioned it at the very beginning. And this is something that Andrew Yang talked about a lot. Like he says, like he wouldn't let his own kids go on social media that much because it's so destructive and damaging. What do you think the effect of social media has been on the development of our youth? And I'm thinking anywhere from the teenage girls who are like looking at Instagram all day and thinking that suddenly they have to look like Kylie Jenner all the time, or like young men who are like, what are the big issues with young men online, like getting radicalized into like alt-right white supremacy? I don't know. Is that what 14-year-olds are doing? When I was 14 and my issue with technology, I think I spent too much time online. I mean, how much is all of this kind of playing into the development of our youth? Just screen time, as well as just the psychology of what these young kids who don't have a developed brain yet are seeing in front of them and thinking what it means for them and their life.
Yeah, this is something that I regularly almost get brought to tears over thinking about this. It's like, I think it is insanely destructive. I mean, in the future, like the world is just going to be very digital, and like there's no other way around that. So there's no like avoiding it to a certain extent. So, but like with the development, it is, we have huge swaths of teenage girls who only find value out of life by how many likes or comments that they get on a photo. And that is during the time where they're developing their self-confidence, and they are thus more vulnerable to other bad things happening. And you think of like young men as well, and just like addictions to things like porn and just like not living in
that's definitely an
valued, which causes them to get into these kind of conspiracy bubbles and just be nihilistic about the world and think that like everything is trying to screw them over. And you see the suicide rates there.
It's like basically when I was watching The Social Dilemma on Netflix, which if anybody hasn't seen that, they should. That goes really in depth in all these topics that we're talking about. But just with the rise of social media, you've literally seen deaths among young people nearly double.
Yeah. So let me tell you one thing that really turned me off about like the Silicon Valley world. So it's like these are all the people in Silicon Valley, the kind of like healthy, well-paid, Silicon Valley types. It's like, these are all the people that their kids have the best habits around social media. So it's like every Friday, I remember vividly, every Friday, it's like everyone gets up from their desk, Facebook, and they're all kind of like, oh yeah, which mountain are you hiking this weekend? Oh yeah, I'm going up Mount Tam. And like, oh, we're going to go do all these healthy outdoor activities. And everyone like posts about it. And it's all like this weird, like non-real bubble of like everyone doing like healthy stuff all the time. And all with like, beautiful families and everything. And it's like, the parents have like screen time caps on mobile phone usage for their kids because they know like what it is. They're helping to build it. And unfortunately, the people that get taken advantage of in the most negative way are the most vulnerable, are the people who don't have other activities to go out and do that give them meaning. So it is minority populations, it's disadvantaged communities that unfortunately have like higher screen time and get more addicted to the dopamine or meaning or whatever you want to call it that they get from all these like internet and social media hits. And it's like the people who are most able to deal with it are the ones where it doesn't affect as much. And unfortunately, the people who are least able to deal with it from like a financial and resources perspective, it is the hardest on. So it's just like leading to this division in society where it's the whole pyramid thing. It's the top is getting higher, the low is like getting lower.
Yeah.
And it's like all these layers of things that are leading us off a cliff, as Yang says.
Catherine says, my head's going to explode. The kids know how to break through the parental controls. It's funny. No, but I mean, that's an interesting point. I've never thought about it that way in terms of actually, if you have less financial resources, you're more susceptible to getting taken advantage of by these
it's true.
Social media and stuff. And thank you, Justin, for the super chat. He says, thanks for speaking the truth, guys. No more people need to see this conversation. Absolutely. Make sure you like the video, subscribe, leave a comment, and boost the engagement. Get this out to more people. I want to talk a little bit more about just big tech in general, because we've been chatting a lot about social media and what's been going on in that sphere. But there's this larger segment of big tech, and you think of companies like Amazon and Google that they aren't running really social media companies and these like online communities, but they are doing something and using technology in ways that we've never really seen before. And the question I really want to ask you when we get into getting into it is, Google. I mean, you probably know off the top of your head more so than I would, but like how much of Google, how much search traffic does Google control? Isn't it like something like 80-90%?
Yeah, I think it's over 90. You know, every once in a while, someone will Bing something, but
yeah, as Andrew said during the debates, like remember he made a Bing joke. You remember that? I forget the specifics, but he made a Bing joke.
I don't think like people got it. There wasn't like a laugh to it.
Amazon, they control such a dominant portion of e-commerce, and they're just like Amazon. When you think of the antitrust laws, and I don't know this too much the specifics of antitrust laws, but Amazon, they own a huge percentage of the market share. They control a huge percentage of the market share of e-commerce. They're in cloud. Like most of Amazon, a large majority of Amazon's revenue actually comes from their cloud computing, Amazon Web Services. They're building out like their own delivery fleet now. They're moving into pharmacies. Like they're in Amazon's everywhere and everything. At what point does Congress like look up and say, okay, maybe the solution to, we can't figure out the social media companies, we can't figure out these giant tech companies. At what point do they say, like, should we consider breaking up these big tech companies? Is that something that you think is maybe a solution? And also, if it is a solution, what type of ramifications would that have on these tech companies for society in general?
Yeah, I am not smart enough to know what the ramifications would be of just like breaking up companies, quote unquote. It's like, to me, that is such a, to borrow another Yang term, like 20th or 19th century solution to like a 21st century solution problem. It's like they didn't have companies back when they broke up like the railroads or big oil or whatever. It's like Amazon's in 38 different industries or whatever. Like these are, you can't just use this very like blunt object that we used in 1900 and like apply it to these incredibly complex companies that are just so insanely different and think that it will think that the results of what will happen will be predictable. So that was just one thing that I liked about Yang was like, he was like, let's think about it differently. Like maybe we should consider like a VAT tax so that, like these companies are going to continue to keep winning no matter what. Like, trust me, I've been inside them. Everyone in there is freaking brilliant. I had like imposter syndrome every day. Like I sat between two Harvard grads at Facebook. It's like, these are smart problem solvers that are going to hit their goals no matter what. And they just have more resources than God. And so it's like, okay, they're going to keep winning. What is a way that we can like maybe take advantage of that revenue growth and like return it somehow in a positive way? And so that was what I really liked the VAT tax from Yang about, was like charging, doing a small toll on the ads and on like Amazon purchases. And like just thinking in like new solutions like that, as opposed to just like, let's reach into the old like bag of political tricks and pull out the 1900 like blunt, like dull knife of like breaking them up. Cause like I don't know. To me, that doesn't seem like the correct solution. Quick story about Amazon, why they're going to continue to keep winning. So when I was there, I did a project, and I was basically on like an internal cost cutting team. Like Amazon's so big, they have whole teams that just go around to each different division and like, eliminate costs basically. And like not anything I'm very interested in. But I remember there at the time, I didn't really think it was that big of a deal. It's like one guy on my team, his project was to basically redo the yearly negotiation that Amazon does with their sellers. So like, hundreds of thousands of people sell through Amazon, and they like their whole business.
That's me
selling through Amazon.
Just a quick, since we are on the topic, quick disclaimer. I do have to disclose that I do sell products on Amazon. So anything I say during this segment is not to be trusted. I have a bias. I'm making a joke. Sorry, continue.
I wish I had Amazon stock.
No, but I am one of those sellers, one of those small sellers that uses Amazon.
Tons of people that do that.
Sorry, I just want to say, and I see a bunch of people in the chat. They're like, "Yeah, I don't use Amazon. I hate them." It's like, I get it. They don't pay their employees enough, but please, there's all these small businesses that sell on Amazon like me, and we're the evils of capitalism. Just kidding. No, but sorry. Go ahead.
And so this guy's project was basically to like redo the negotiation process each year. So I mean, I don't know if like you've experienced it or not, but like before they had like different like vendor managers and different like teams that manage groups of like people like you who sell through Amazon. And he basically automated that whole process and made it so that he literally like carved out, it was something like $250 million to Amazon's bottom line just by redoing and automating the vendor negotiation process at Amazon. So,
you get a bonus for that?
So like one person doing one project over like half a year saved $250 million. Now, like to me, that was just like, that is insane. Like, so what does that mean? That essentially means that like $250 million, and you could think about it cynically, but was like taken away from the profit margins of people like yourself, people who sell through Amazon, just by like one person who did that. And so that also means that those sellers will now become more dependent on Amazon because their prices are going to be lowered through that negotiation savings. Thus, they'll have more sales through Amazon. Thus, they have to give more inventory to Amazon. So it's like all these processes being automated at all times in big tech is just making them like have like a bigger shield from competition, from anyone ever being able to like compete with them. So it's that just really struck me, like the power of technology to where at scale you can make a few minor tweaks, and because it's across so many different users, that like hundreds of millions of dollars can be saved. And it's like Amazon will probably reinvest that and obviously like create new things or create like new benefits, but like that is just a small way that essentially hurts the retail industry, hurts, mom and pop stores, and like they're continuing to eat up $30 million of retail every year. And so it's like, so these companies are always going to win unless we start, and like there's nothing really like wrong with that. And like I'm not like anti-capitalist. I think that they do like a lot of good for society. But it's like we need to start thinking in different ways to like take advantage of that and
harness the gains, the gains of these 21st century $1 trillion technology companies. I mean, that's really what it is, right? I mean, you mentioned earlier with the value added tax.
Mm-hmm.
But sorry, let me pull up my little chart here. I want to talk about data and safeguarding our data, because another one of these things is what all these different companies and you mentioned it, they know more about us than we know about ourselves. Yeah. Like they have so much data on us that literally some people's like data profile, the amount of information that these companies have on people, it can be worth thousands of dollars because companies will pay for that information, and they literally know how to market any single thing they ever would like to do so to you. Like, and I'm sure people notice it. You go and you do a Google search for something, and then suddenly you're on Facebook and you have a Facebook ad about that thing you just Google searched, and you're like, oh, what's going on here? So I guess 2 questions. One, how scared should people be of what companies are doing with their data? But then 2, what are the solutions to that? And is something like Prop 24, which is a big consumer privacy law that just passed in California, is that maybe like an answer to this kind of problem?
Yeah, it's tough to know like what there's no like one answer to any of these problems. I think like the big answer that people can do on the ground is just to like think that they actually are problems and talk about them and like care about them. Because like I think a lot of people have the general notion that, oh, my data is being used and like it's like scary and it's bad, but like, you know, I'm okay. You know, I haven't really seen anything bad happen to me because of it. And so it's like very easy to just kind of ignore. Like I do it. I still just click through, hit the accept terms. There's nothing really that you can do. So it's like, and it's not necessarily like nefarious. They're not like selling your email addresses and like sending like, here's my packet of Matt Skidmore who lives in Germantown, Maryland, and all that or whatever. And it's, you know, they are putting people for ads in front of a cohort of individuals who all have a similar psychological profile, so that the message that you send them, they can like better predict what you'll do with that message. And so in terms of, so the Data Dividend Project, Enoch Lang, my boy, email me back. That I think is a good thing to kind of start thinking about ways that we can like harness this and like give some value back to people. So that's one thing. I think that Prop 24, I don't know all the like legalistic terms and all that. I know that Yang Enoch supported it, so I trust them, and I think it's probably overall a good thing. I was talking with one of my lawyer friends in LA who was like, yeah, this is going to create a mess for small businesses who aren't going to be able to like comply as easily. And at the end of the day, like the big tech companies are going to be able to maneuver around all this a lot easier than a potential competitor would. So who knows if that just leads to like big tech companies.
Yeah, I mean,
in the long term.
Just going off of that, I mean, it seems like part of the problem here is that the big tech companies are smarter than they're way smarter than the people that are in charge of regulating them the government.
A huge problem.
And they're also just they're disadvantaged because, like what you said, when tech companies have a problem, they fix that in 10 minutes. When the government has a problem, they take 10 years or more to fix that.
They campaign on it and raise money on it and say, we're going to fix this if you just get us into office. And then they conveniently find a way to not fix it and blame the other side and gain more fans. That is how politics works.
Yeah, I'm laughing because it's funny but it's not really funny. It sucks so much. And it feels like we're so screwed. And this brings to my next question, like just knowing that we're already so behind on big tech. Our government has no clue what they are doing. And then you think about what's going on in China and other countries over the next few decades where it seems like we're headed towards this like global technology race, like with artificial intelligence and automation and like the rest of it. Are we basically screwed in terms of keeping up like internationally with these other countries? Because I mean, I feel like in this scenario, the public sector, or sorry, not the public sector, the private sector, these tech companies that we do need to regulate and get a hold on, they actually are going to end up being what saves us. Because the government, it sucks. We need somebody like Andrew Yang in office, or like we need some sort of Department of Technology, somebody who can actually get in there and won't have their hands tied behind their back, who can do something about this, because it's getting out of hand.
Yeah, like my big thing is like there is no incentive for like people who like solving problems to go into politics or to go like to become a politician. It's like I like to say like so you see all the people that are like have like the good degrees, go to the good schools, and it's like most of them go into like finance. And you know what Yang talked about, like all the kind of top quote unquote problem solving people. Not that there aren't very smart people that don't go to like the top schools, but all those people go into like one of 5 industries in like 6 cities. It's like consulting, finance, tech, marketing, whatever. And they're in Chicago, LA, San Francisco, New York. And if we took some percentage of those people who are like good at solving problems, which is why they're attracted to the private industry, and we had them go into something adjacent to politics or government, like that would be one thing to like help move the needle. But it's like once they got there, they would be like, wow, like nothing can change here. This is like, I'm wasting my time. And so, which is why they're kind of naturally like propelled by that. It doesn't mean that like people who work in the government are not like good people or who don't like care about solving problems.
It's their hands are tied behind their back.
Their hands are tied, yeah. And so it's like, and that was one of the big things for me leaving Facebook was like, we need more people who understand how technology works to go into some type of field that is like in politics or adjacent to it. So like, I'll plug my startup really quickly here, but it's called Upstate North Carolina, Upstate NC. And what we do is like basically political transparency for the North Carolina state government. So we do bill tracking and basically tell you what's going on with legislation and help you understand the changes in bills that happen in real time. And then help you do advocacy campaigns for like nonprofits and state associations that care about applying pressure on different politicians. So like my whole thing was like, we need people who understand how tech works to come and just like inject like knowledge of technology into politics in general or industries that are adjacent to it that work with it, just so that like eventually they can kind of catch up and become more efficient and start thinking about problems in different ways. Because like you look at different state legislatures across the country, like people don't know what the heck is going on. They will change bills under like cover of darkness, and then they get approved, and like whole industries changed. Like I was speaking with a chiropractor in North Carolina who said, hey, me and 20 chiropractors had to storm the North Carolina General Assembly last year because we found out last minute that a bill was being pushed through that was going to change the definition of what a chiropractor is. And we didn't have any forewarning. It came up for a vote quickly. They changed all this stuff and we didn't know. So they literally had to like get in their cars and drive and like storm the legislature. So like my company kind of like tries to help you understand that ahead of time. But if even like association, like big medical associations, like don't know what's going on with legislation that could affect their entire industry, it's like average citizens definitely don't know. Many companies don't know. And the only people that do know are the ones that have very sophisticated lobbyists who are on top of all of that and are protecting like kind of like the big business interests. So I don't know. We need more tech people. We need people who understand tech, who understand how to solve problems to like go into the world or the realm of politics, whether it's like competition or like bringing tech to it. It's very easy to disrupt. Like our product is already like 5 times better than anyone because they've all been around forever. And
well, it's definitely a really good use of technology. And I did really like actually the idea you said in the very outset, talking about like using technology, like to basically do what you're doing in the North Carolina, state legislatures, but to do it on like a national scale so people could actually be in tune with what their government's doing, try to get rid of all the noise. Because I mean, if you're getting news from Fox News or CNN or MSNBC, you're getting it through their lens of the situation. It'd be good to just see like the actual facts of what's going on. When it comes to getting more people who are smart and understand these things into the government and into these positions where they can actually make changes. I mean, it's kind of what you said. Like, I don't know if you said this specifically, but the incentives it doesn't really seem that there are incentives for people to do that. I mean, think of somebody like Andrew Yang, who he he's not even really actually like a tech guy. He just happens to not be an idiot. But because he got labeled during the campaign as Silicon Valley tech pro billionaire guy, even though he never lived in Silicon Valley, et cetera, et cetera. But I mean, even somebody like him, who's a good guy, understands these issues. Like, I mean, anybody looking at what happened to him, why would they want to go into politics? Like, he gets called right when he launched his campaign, like started becoming mainstream in spring 2019. He gets labeled like the white supremacist candidate. Like, people dig through your life, try to find every single bad thing about you. I know. And then like, I'm just thinking like in terms of pay, money rules everything. Like, there's no lying about that. If I'm an engineer, and I know Google will pay me $500,000 to write algorithms for them and stuff, or be their technology, like legal, like chief legal technology. Like I know if you watched Joe Rogan, he had on Jack Dorsey as well as like the chief legal person for Twitter. Like that lady probably makes bank. She probably has a really smart understanding of the issues. So she's somebody that would maybe be good in government. But there's no incentive because like, do I take 500,000 working for Twitter or do I take 100,000 working for the federal government? But so I guess this is the thing that your startup made me think of. Do you think that maybe just for society in general, like people, when we think of where we should focus our efforts on technology and our lobbying efforts and our passion and our grassroots energy, should it maybe actually be more on the state and local level than on the federal government? Because we know that the federal government is slow and falling behind. And we did see California, they did pass something, at least something. People can debate all day. I know some people think that, the tech companies, it was too favorable towards them, but it's like, at least they did something. I'm guessing maybe that the solution is to try to focus more on the state level.
Yes, I completely agree. Care about where you live, care about the people around you, care about your community, care about your state. That is just kind of like an existential solution to like many of the problems in society now. Like, we are all many people are just sitting around hypnotized by this like national theater going on of like Trump versus Biden and like, not like, in my opinion, a lot of this almost amounts to nothing in the long run. It's like, why aren't we talking about like issues that could actually affect and like help or hurt people in actual states and where they live? And so on the one hand, it's actually like easier to like help affect change on the state level too, because there's not as much money in it that would be kind of fighting against you. So on like the federal level, it's like the power that, the political machine on the federal level has is very intimidating and would be very easy to like shut down any type of like national campaign that threatened the way that basically business is normal there. And we saw that with them trying to shut out Yang as much as possible, but he was too nice of a guy to go away. But on the state level, it's actually easier because there's not as much power, and people can like feel what happens through different laws and different legislation that's passed a lot more. And it's also just like easier to grasp. Like, but there's less incentive for the media to like talk about that, because they want you like talking about like Lindsey Graham and Kamala and all these like storylines of all this, because like they can make a lot of money off of that.
Yeah. I mean, literally, you see, I don't know if you ever got ads, but I kept getting ads the past few months for this guy who was running for Congress against Maxine Waters in California. And it's like, come on, guys, it's like a super Democrat district. That guy has no chance, but he's getting millions and millions of dollars just because he's like one of the, if you're a Republican, Maxine Waters is one of the enemies that we have to take down. It's like, guys, Maxine Waters is not the one that's affecting your life. Like, you need to focus on the real issues.
Yeah, I mean, it's all like that whole like enemy. If you can find someone who has like a personality or who did something or who can be turned into an enemy, then you can like create some type of messaging campaign around that. And so it's all just about kind of controlling the messaging, controlling the way, like the frame in which huge groups of people are kind of like think or like are allowed to think. And there's, I mean, all these organizations like lobbying, like associations that are helping government like half of their job is just like trying to control the conversation, basically. And that goes into like which news stories are allowed to be shown. And so like cynically, it is not just, freedom fighter reporters going out there and trying to get you the truth. Like that might've been true in a previous life. And there are some people that do that. I think it happens a lot more on the independent side, which is why we need to grow that. But if you're thinking that like the majority of like CNN, Fox, MSNBC reporters are like going out there pounding the pavement and like bringing you the truth, and like you do not understand how business works. You do not understand this model.
Yeah, they're on Twitter sipping their latte in the Starbucks. Yeah, really hard hitting journalism.
Yeah, so it's they're putting on a show. It's a reality TV show that they have.
And then if you tell a journalist to learn to code, you get banned from Twitter. No, I'm just kidding. No, but I'm being ridiculous.
You need to care about your state, because state is so much cooler and interesting than federal. All right.
Yeah, no, I think that's the lesson we learned there. I think not even just on tech, but like all sorts of issues. That's actually where you can make the real change, and where the government, I think more of your day-to-day life is impacted by what's happening at the local and state level than at the federal level at the end of the day. Maybe that would be different if our federal government actually was capable of getting things done and helping us.
So one of the funny, I don't know. I don't want to. I hate being like too overly negative about things.
I'm the type of person where I'll crap on something and be like, I'll put it to someone straight, like this is the way it is. It's awful, but at the end of the day, I will still try to be optimistic and hopeful.
Yeah.
Like I mean, I feel like one of the things that I wish we were able to get more, because I know we're coming towards the end of this conversation, is just trying to get in more of like, what are the actual solutions to solving all these different issues? But the problem is, in most of these areas, it requires government, and the government is just too slow. They're too behind. Yeah. So it's a tough one for sure.
Yeah, it is tough in terms of solutions. I mean, there's small things that we could start working on. One of them is just talking about this stuff. One of them is trying to grow independent media and voices that are not kind of beholden to funders who make them speak in certain ways, which is like what happens in corporate media, unfortunately. And so I'm glad that you're doing that. I'm thinking about starting a YouTube channel as well, but we'll see. And then what's another thing? Another thing is like we need to somehow find a way to incentivize people, like being okay with admitting that their viewpoint might not be 100% correct, or like that other people have merits in different types of viewpoints, or at least that other people's viewpoints who don't think like you are not existentially leading to the downfall of society. Like that right there, it's like all the messaging and everything just reinforces that, because that is like a very profitable thing to do.
Yep.
But I don't know if we could think of some way of like, hey, like you had a conversation with someone who didn't, and you guys like hashed out issues and maybe like a Socratic method, or like you get some type of like point or some type of incentive because you had like a positive, productive conversation with someone who doesn't think like you. And it's not like you changed your beliefs or they did, but like having a civil conversation with someone is like just so important. It would ease the tension, because one of the things that really pisses me off, where's my camera? One of the things that really pisses me off is families, friendships, mothers, daughters, like grandparents, marriages are being broken up. Our people are hating each other. I had another group of friends who said that their friends literally got divorced over this Trump and Biden thing. Parents and kids are not talking to each other because they have been convinced that the parent or the kid, their ideology is killing people and it's terrible. And like, that's not the truth. We have to, like, how disgusting is it that like a lot of the end product of a lot of these corporate media narratives is leading to people hating other people, is leading to people not showing empathy for different viewpoints, is leading to people basically hating on entire regions of the country, whether it's like the Midwest or the big populated cities. Like, why is that what we are going towards? Like, that is insane, and it is not good. It's not healthy, and it's just making it harder to come back from. So we need to figure out ways to incentivize the opposite of that, whatever that is.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I guess at the end of the day, I mean, we can keep trying to look for some sort of solution where the government fixes it for us. But I mean, at the end of the day, there is some sort of personal responsibility on people to not be assholes to each other.
Yeah.
And I was talking about this with Paget on the Paget Match Show last week. And I think something I said, I was like, if you think that your neighbor who voted differently from you is your biggest problem in life, then like your problems probably aren't actually all that bad, and like it's probably a sign that your life's actually very boring and you're just spending too much time on these social media bubbles that convinced you that your Biden loving neighbor wants to turn America into Venezuela and eat dogs, and your Trump loving neighbor wants to ban whatever crazy thing gets cooked up these days. But anyways, Cody, I really appreciated having you on and getting into this topic more and having on this conversation. I was thinking like we could have you on sometime to talk about your reaction to after the government fixes everything.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't be on
20 years, Matt. Okay.
Yeah, come back and you'll have gray hair. I'm gonna have.
We did it. Yeah. No, I'd love to come back anytime. I love talking about this stuff. It's really the only thing that I can think about, because it's just so obvious that most people are not aware of it, and I think it needs to be talked about.
Yep, it does. People sorry, I keep messing up. People do need to think about it more and how it will impact their life, because as we've been kind of reinforcing this over and over, it's only going to get worse and worse and become more of a problem. I know you mentioned you're thinking about starting a YouTube channel. I know you're on Twitter. What's your Twitter? It's at Cody RH2020, right?
Cody RH 2020. And then my startup is at Upstate, UPSTATE, NC, North Carolina.
Yeah. So if you're in North Carolina and you want to learn more about your legislature,
you want to hook me up with Humanity First and what they're doing with startups, would love to talk with them.
Yeah, for sure. Because that's something that, you were saying, could definitely get applied. I mean, maybe you'll be the one to do it. Maybe your startup will be a good startup and then expand to other states. No, but anyways, it was great having you on, Cody, and thanks everybody for watching. Hope everybody has a great rest of your weekend and a great Thanksgiving week to come, whether you're allowed to have Thanksgiving with your family or you're not allowed, or you are allowed to have Thanksgiving with your family. All right. Take care, everybody.